Hello, everyone. It is good to be back on the narrow path with Katrina McKide. I am excited here to give another vlog post. It's been a whole week. I haven't done a vlog post for a whole week. Man, has it been busy. I have been working on not being a hypocrite by actually putting priorities first things first. So when life gets fast, I say go slower. That's one of my mottos. That's what I say. And so I go into prayer more and ask for more help and work on those things so that I can come back with genuine, authentic answers that work for me and hopefully will work for you. I worked this week with helping our son Caleb. He got an apartment in town and we were moving him into town. We're still working on health insurance information. Isn't that amazing? Health insurance has been such a difficult thing for us to work with. I'm sure many of you actually can relate, have had all kinds of health insurance issues. Well, we're having them ourselves here. So we're just taking it one step at a time. We know that if it's like this, that Father has something even better in store for us that He's working out. And so we're relaxing, knowing He's got it under control. Our immigration is still working on that as well, just because of the health insurance. So that's coming along. Tim hasn't been feeling the best this week. He's been transitioning onto a new type of eating plan called the keto diet. Some of you may have heard it. He's hoping that it will help him with his health even more and feel great. But sometimes you don't feel so good when you transition onto a new diet. So he's kind of been working with that. And also my son Zachary, we have been putting him on a different diet plan as well called the specific carbohydrate diet. And there's plenty, you can Google that as well. I mean, it's everywhere, both of these new diets. But we're hoping that it will help him to have less seizures with time, and we're adjusting his intestinal flora to be healthier, which means more work for Mom, because I am buying more fresh vegetables and having to prep and cook and also prepare meals for him to be at the center, which makes a lot more work for me. And he was recovering from seizures. So as you can see, just life happened and then holding down my job. So that's what I've been up to for the week. And this is what we've been up to for, as together in the whole family for the week. That's the update on that. And I've also been sitting on a question. And this question is really dear. It's been something that I've been working out for the past week on how to respond. It is a very sensitive question. And I'll say up front that I'm going to handle it with as much love and sensitivity as I possibly can. And also be honest and genuine with how I handled what's being asked here. In the narrow path number 51 that I did, I mentioned how I had gone through a very dark time, and I was in a black space, and it was very lonely and terrifying and full of pain. And so I understand severe depression. I understand pain and suffering, and that's what it was like for me. A lady, her name is Sharon. She is the one that put a comment there on the narrow path number 51, and she had a daughter who, at the same time that our son was in the hospital, Zachary was in the hospital in February for a whole month fighting for his life. Her daughter had been too, and unfortunately Sharon's daughter passed away, and my son lived, although we stayed in faith and we were okay if he lived or died, but we fought and did our best, and we also prayed for Sharon's daughter at the time, and it just worked out different for Sharon at this time, and so her daughter is sleeping now, and awaiting her Messiah and to be awakened again. So it's hard to answer this question because I know that this is a very dear thing for many people when we work with death issues and pain issues and fear issues and loved one issues. And I do say many times in my vlog posts to deal with your death issues. and also death issues of other people and pain and suffering are things that we deal with in this lifetime. So here's the question, and I hope, I'm not sure it is a question. That's what I'm kind of like been holding back on answering it, because sometimes when we're in pain, we say things in question form, wanting just comfort. And so if that's what you were intending, I just want to say my heart goes out to you. I give you a big, huge hug, and I ask that you will be able to open your heart up to accept the capital C Comforter, who wants to comfort you, is always there for you to take in that comfort. And hopefully I'll be able to share some things that opened me up to accept the Comforter that is always there for any of us to take in our suffering, in our pain, in our fears of the things that happen, in the out of control things that happen to us in the flesh. So that's my goal and hope, is to give answers that were answers for me that may work for you when you're ready. And if you're not ready, please understand, I'm not trying to change your pain. I'm not trying to make you give it up. I'm only sharing how I was able to give up mine. And maybe when you are ready, it will help give you little places of hope that you can do it too. Okay? So here's the question. It's from a woman named Sharon. How did you get out of the black alone and not wanting to live? That's what I mentioned in the Narrow Path vlog post number 51. She says, I feel that way all the time. And I am alone and just lost my dear daughter that made me want to live. And she has been dead for 6 months, and I just want to be with her. So as you can tell, this is very dear, very, very precious, as far as someone that was so important to her, not with her any longer, and she feels alone. I felt very alone. When we're in pain and suffering, many times we feel very alone, and we feel like people don't understand us. And everyone has their own pain that really people can be there with them in the pain, but it is their own pain. And I recognize that. So I'm going to talk about my own pain and those black times just a little bit and how I got out of it. Very quickly, I had had a very difficult life from my perception. And I was not clear that life was a gift. I wasn't clear on it because the only thing that I felt chronically was pain. Pain about not being good enough, not getting it right enough, being rejected, being used, being someone who I felt like was more of a slave to do things for everybody else, but to be kicked around at the same time. And so and I was supposed to take it with a smile on my face, and I did. And most people didn't even know that I felt that way because I was trained to always put a smile on my face and to always do things looking as if I'm doing it from joy. And so I was taught, actually, the way that I grew up within the church I grew up in and the society I grew up in, make it till you fake it. And so I was the best actress in the world. Did I have some happy moments? Yes. I would say it was more like what I hear many comedians speak, that actually many of their jokes and their funniness comes from pain. Just like artwork many times comes from pain and suffering. So I would guess that that's probably more where it was honed from. I came to a place with all the pain that I really didn't want, because I felt so much pain and suffering, and I came to a place where I wouldn't even want my worst enemy to feel that type of pain and suffering, because I didn't want anyone to feel as bad as I felt. And it was a chronic feeling. That's how it felt. And I got a few nervous breakdowns from it. And Father slowly worked with me on it because I hung in there. What I found out was that we all have free will to choose what we want to believe. And my belief that life maybe wasn't the gift that God said it was, and also that the future was not as good as I didn't feel could be as good as God said it could be, including becoming a glorified human being. So I was in a place of real pain, and the only reason I've honored God and Christ all my life the best that I can, and the reason I chose to still go that way, even though I did not believe that things would get better necessarily, because I had no proof and no feeling. I didn't really even understand joy. I didn't understand happiness in its full sense inside, like just absorbed in, like little second moments here and there that would just be great. And then I would drop back into the lack of joy and more suffering and pain. So it was just spurts in and then chronically mostly out. So with all of that, I just came to a place of hopelessness. And I realized that I talked to God. What I wanted was that I don't even know how to say this. Sometimes it's just hard to explain things. When you're there, you reevaluate everything you believe in, and you reevaluate what you think. And I was at a point where I needed different thoughts. I desperately needed some kind of hope. What I had figured out is that Father, he started teaching me some things when I was slow and in that pain, but asking questions and genuinely wanting to know the answers. Is number one, that he gave us free will. And that doesn't seem like it applies, but actually it does, because that free will gives us the ability to choose and create and choose to believe what we want to believe. And based on that, act in faith off of those beliefs. And he was allowing me to believe about him whatever I wanted to believe about life whatever I wanted to believe about who I was and the meaning of life and everything else the way I wanted to. He's not 100% convincing, because he wants you to have space to be able to choose by faith what you want to believe. And so I found out that what I had faith in was that life was painful, that I was created to be a slave. I was created to be a slave that was beaten and used and manipulated, and that I was supposed to help everyone else have a better life. And that was the reason for my existence. That's kind of where I went to. And I didn't want it to get worse. So I followed God and Christ, because I could see that the world's way and Satan's way was not a good way at all. It was creating more trouble for everyone around. And I really came to a point that I didn't even want my worst enemy to have this kind of pain. I didn't want anything in existence to have the amount of pain that I felt inside, just on all levels: emotional, physical, psychological, spiritual, just feeling alone, abandoned, beaten, just beaten down, dark, black. I didn't want that for anyone. I thought it was more kind to not exist at all than to be given life in this form. And Father started showing me that actually, we think that he did it, and like he's there ready to reprimand us and put us down and not give us things because we do bad. And he gently started showing me that actually what happened is we fell when we wanted to choose to love ourselves more than our neighbors, to love other things more than God's way, and that we can love God by loving his way, which is loving your neighbor as yourself, and to be giving and forgiving, and he's very forgiving. And yes, there are consequences that happen from us not being that way. When we don't love God with our whole heart, might, and soul, and love our neighbor as ourself for the love of God, because God is love, and that's how we get along together. That's how you have happiness and peace amongst one another. That's how you have all these things. He started teaching me those things and showing that the suffering of this life, all the suffering in this life, whether it is persecution, whether it's being put down, whether it's being abandoned and rejected and feeling those things, losing things that we love, people that we love, suffering losses, that these things can have purpose for something even better. And that is to really strengthen us in knowing that we definitely don't want our own way. We do not want the way that all humans have created on this planet. We don't want the way of Satan because it creates this type of pain. So this was the things that he was wanting me to come to desperately want his way. Not to just feel forced into his way, but to, by experience, understand why his way is better than any other way. So even when your enemies are being cruel to you, be kind to them. Because they're just in pain. They're already in pain. And it's not working to give them more pain. When has it ever worked to give people more pain? You say, well, you spare the rod, you spoil the child. You're not trying to beat them down. You're trying to help guide them to build them up. And I'm not going to get into argument of spanking or not spanking. My point is that Father's way is about building up. Satan's way and our way is about beating down. And that's the difference. And I needed to desperately want his way more than anything else. That's what I needed. I had today, I was praying this morning, and I had a verse go through my head. I didn't really understand why, because it seemed like one of those verses on the side that, we don't think about real well, or we don't understand. We might have it memorized, but we don't understand it. It says that Christ is the author and finisher of our faith. It sounds really, really pretty. But we don't really stop to think, well, what does that mean? How is he the author and finisher of our faith? We usually go, hallelujah, that's true, and then we move on, but we don't really understand it. And so I went, what is that verse saying, and what was the context of it? And so I Googled it, of course. I got to Hebrews chapter 11 and 12. So the question in my head was about faith. Now this is what it took to get me out of the black hole. See, we all have faith. We all have faith in what we think we believe and what we think we know. Based off of what we think we've experienced or what we think is right, we all make these judgments. So you have faith in something. You may have faith that the world is terrible and life is terrible and everything else. Or you might have a different type of faith. So the way out of the black hole for me was by faith to choose what I believed in, even if I did not have evidence that it was true. I know, inconvenient, right? That's what happened. I decided that I was going to believe something that made me happy, even if I had no belief, I had no experience that it could be true. I did it by saying, okay, I'm going to believe that God is 100% good. I'm going to believe that this suffering has purpose and that he really didn't leave me even though I feel like he left me to be abandoned and abused. I'm going to believe, since I came to the place where I realized I was fully and totally and utterly out of control, whether I existed or not. That means I live in this physical life as long as God has me in this physical life. And even if I die, I do not have control of when I live again and experience existing again. I have zero control over that. And that made me really mad, because that means that I'm 100% not in control. And I didn't trust that God had me alive for good reasons. I was not convinced because of all the pain that I'd been in. I had to go back to the basics. I had to go back to what I really trusted in. And that's how I got to all of these things I'm teaching you, is that I decided, okay, this isn't working. I can be terrified for eternity of a God that I'm not convinced who created me is 100% good. And whether I'm in this life or another life or completely dead, I don't know if I'm going to stay dead or could stay dead even if I died, based off of my structure of belief systems at the time. Even with everything the Bible said and everybody said about God and everything else, I wasn't fully convinced. I had to go back and go, okay, since I have no control, first I threw a fit. I got really angry because I was that out of control of my existence and conscious of being aware that I existed in the pain and everything else. So that felt out of control. So I got mad. After I calmed down a little bit, I said, okay, so if I cannot choose if I exist or not, if I'm aware that I exist or not, and I am not convinced that even if I died, even if I killed myself, it's not permanent. Actually, I was sure it was not. That was my faith and my belief that was the case, and therefore that's not a way out. There's no way out. So what could I believe that could make me happier? I came to a place where I realized the only thing that could make me happy is if all of this could have meaning, and that sooner or later I could be fully out of pain. So I said, the first thing I'd have to believe is in a God that I can trust 100% is good. So I started thinking about it and said, well, I have nothing to lose by believing he's 100% good at this point. I have nothing, whether it's true or not. Life and existence is too scary. It is too difficult. I am too terrified at the thought of a God creating me that I can't trust and doesn't fully love me and want to take care of me. So I'm just going to believe it because it makes me happy. And I worked from there. And I started to recognize, things started opening up, that what God really wants is to give to us. He wants to give and give. But the thing is he gives us free will to be able to make choices for ourselves, because he wants us to not be forced into anything, but find a place where we want what he wants. See, it's Satan and each other, humans, that try to force and control and manipulate to a place that we try to use people and we try to get things from people and we try to limit them and take away what they have and use it for ourselves. And when we do that, we hurt everybody, because it becomes about us, or it becomes about somebody that you make a god, or about your car, or about your house, or about your kids, but by doing that, it becomes about just a little section of society and taking from every place else in order to sustain your little section of whatever. It could be just about you and your pleasure, going on vacations. I don't know. It could be anything. What God is looking for is a way that is loving your neighbor as yourself, so that you're looking at a way that everyone is considered to be taken care of for eternity. That's his way. And that's the way he is. He's a giver. He wants us all to get along and live peaceably together, to live with respect for one another. He wants us to all have the heart of 1 Corinthians chapter 13. I've talked about this many times. Love is patient and kind. It believes all things. It hopes all things. It endures all things. It's not boastful. All of these things in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. That's the way God is. And that's the way he wants us to be, because it's the only way that brings peace. Everything else we are proving on our own is bringing pain and suffering and consequences and fear. And when we believe that this way works and the satanic way works and our own lower way works to just try to survive this life and take from everyone else, that's how we end up in this mess. And that's how we hurt one another. So I realized that I want God's way, and that means to love your enemies. I didn't want anyone to feel as bad as I felt. I didn't want that. I wanted to be relieved myself, but I knew that genuine relief of what I was looking for eternity wasn't in hurting anyone else. You might get away for it for a little while, and you might get some relief for a little while by taking in that way, by hurting your enemies and hurting other people. But in the end, you're still back to pain. It's still taking. It's still, whenever you take in that form from someplace and you steal for a while to relieve yourself, you snap back into paying for it in one way or another. Either your enemies get stronger and then they retaliate, or they get more people after you. I mean, it just doesn't work. So I realized that the whole construct of what God was giving versus what Satan and human was giving was completely opposite and different. And the only thing that had the possibility of working, since obviously the way I was being treated was not working, and I'm sure some of the ways, I'm still coming out of it, the world, like everyone else, and learning how to love. What I do wrong is not benefiting anyone. So I choose to have my will become like God's will, who knows better that loving one another is the only way that gives joy and happiness and fun for eternity instead of what we're living now. And he made us he made it so that at the moment, since we fell, we are temporary. We will die. And that's actually a gift as well. Because if we lived for eternity hurting one another, what kind of existence is that? If we lived, even if we did well because we kept taking from everyone for eternity on the expense of everyone else not doing well, would that be just? So I had to question these things. So this is how this relates to the scripture that I'm bringing up in Hebrews chapter 12. I'll go backwards here, but this is the scripture that came to my head. Hebrews chapter 12 verse 2 says, keeping our eyes on Jesus, the source and perfecter of our faith. In other translations, it says the author and finisher of our faith. So I went, what does that mean? What does that, I don't understand. So how is Christ the author and finisher of our faith? And people get really religious and they go, that's easy, or we get all this hallelujah, praise the Lord, but we really don't understand what it means. And I had to pause and think about it. And I realized that faith is what we talk about. Faith is believing in something that we don't have full evidence of. We just believe it because we choose to believe it and have that trust on it and walk in that direction. So I went backwards and started reading, and the Hebrews is a whole letter that was given to the Hebrews. And before we get to that verse that I just read, it's a chapter, a few chapters. Chapter 11, all of chapter 11 is talking about people that showed faith, that lived by faith, that chose to believe something when it was hard to believe it. over and over again. He talks about how in verse 11 or chapter 11 verse 1, now faith is the reality of what is hoped for. So it's hoping for something. The proof of what is not seen. So it's not something that you can convince anyone else of. It's just what you decide to believe. So really, I'm not saying everybody gets mad at me. I mean, my husband thought I was absolutely out of my mind when I came to this. He was happy with the results because I was a happier person and I started getting happier and happier. But he was like, this is crazy. Believe in something just because it makes you happy? Well, that's basically what this is saying. For our ancestors won God's approval by it. Right? So if you want to see God show up, you just believe that he's good because you want to, and it makes you happier than believing it doesn't. And it's less fearful to believe he's 100% good, not only to us, but the people we love. That he loves them even more than we do. And he knows exactly where they're at and what they've experienced. And he, for eternity, has a plan, even for your loved ones. He loves them. He is the definition of love. It says God is love. So if he is love, he's genuine, perfect love, which means any of your family members, and including yourself, he loves even more than you can ever imagine. He loves his creation. He loves those that he created in his image and likeness. Do you trust him with that? Do you trust him that he's that good? And that this makes sense even when people are taken from us, and that he's there to comfort you. He will never leave you or forsake you. Us humans have no choice but to die. But our Messiah is alive forever and ever. And God, the Father, is alive forever and ever. And they, because they live forever and ever, don't ever have to leave us or forsake us because they're always alive. Everyone else, if you've put your trust and your confidence and your foundation in family members or on things that can pass away, houses, cars, money, health, kids, yes, you're going to have a hard time when those things fail you. The only thing that makes you built on a rock is to recognize that when these things are taken from us, to open ourselves up to allow it to be okay, and that the way that we are okay is that we realize that they were temporary, those things were temporary, but God is forever and he's good, and the Messiah that came for us is that good. So it goes here to verse 3 in chapter 11 of Hebrews. By faith we understand that the universe was created by God's command. So were you there? We're just believing this because that's what it says happened. Okay? And I'm talking to believers, obviously. So if you're a believer, by faith, this is the things that we, by faith, believe in. So you're already, like I said, having faith in things. It's what you choose to have faith in. And that is your job. No one can force, they can convince you of certain things to believe. But the truth is it's your responsibility for what you choose to believe. And that is true freedom. So if what you are holding on to that people have convinced you is not working, get a new belief. Choose something different. Okay. It goes on about how faith, by faith, Abel offered to God a better sacrifice than Cain did, because Abel believed that God was so good, he was so awesome, that he wanted to give something even better, that he came from his heart of saying, I genuinely appreciate what you've done and what you give and what you have for me, and I appreciate it so much, and I appreciate that you are 100% good, and I believe that just believing that and trusting that, I'm showing you through my sacrifice. Cain was kind of like, yeah, okay, he's a good dude. I'll give him something. There's a difference in attitude. Okay, not that Cain didn't have faith. It just wasn't as strong in what he believed in. And so he got jealous and angry because God was happier with that. It's like having two friends. If you have a friend who's really into you and is really excited and believes in you all the time, and you have another friend that likes hanging out with you and thinks you're cool and everything else, which one really gets your heart more, or actually should? The one that believes in you, right? Same thing. Okay, so Enoch did things by faith. It talks about Noah doing things by faith. So he did by faith, Noah, after he was warned about what was not yet seen, right? They'd never seen rain before, ever. Okay? And motivated by godly fear, because he believed that God was good and that what God said would happen, even though he had no proof because there had never been rain before. He did what God said, believing that God had his best interests in mind and best interests of what he was doing, and that his plan was best. So he did it believing that it was important to do what God said because God is that good. And so he built an ark to deliver his family. And by faith, he condemned the world, even though the world was still living and everything else, and it looked like, God wasn't going to judge everything. He still condemned it, and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. Righteousness, being made right, comes by believing in faith in the right things. So that's why you hear, I'm very specific in my message, and you hear me repeat it so many times, because literally it has been my lifesaver. It has been the thing that has drug me out of the depths of darkness, of my own feeling of hell, and has given me a growing sense of joy, a growing sense of peace, a growing sense of purpose, and also a growing sense all the time. I feel God's presence stronger and stronger all the time. The more that you choose by faith that God is 100% good and his way is 100% good, which is righteousness, which is love God with your whole heart, mind, soul, and love your neighbors yourself for the love of God. I know I say that a lot. Literally, that's your way out. That is so meaningful, and that is the only thing that brings eternal happiness and peace, living with one another. And God will take care of the enemies with time. Right now, he's teaching us why his way is better than any other way. And the best way to learn it is by living in the opposite of that and finding how difficult and ridiculous and horrid and just terrifying it is. That's what we're learning right now. Just like it says, Christ learned things through the things he suffered. We're here for suffering right now. So it talks about Abraham by faith. It talks about Sarah by faith. It talks about, goes on about Isaac. And then Isaac by faith blessing Jacob and Esau, and giving a blessing to your children. You're going to die before you see the blessings upon them and upon their seed and upon the generations and hundreds and thousands of years in the future. But you still bless them, believing that God is going to help you say the proper blessing for them and help it come to pass. That's what blessing does, is believing that God will truly do what's coming from your lips to those people. Otherwise, why open your mouth? So it's faith. It's faith to bless. And Joseph by faith. And I love this one about Moses. Moses' parents. So by faith, after Moses was born, he was hidden by his parents for 3 months. And actually that was against the law. Pharaoh wanted all the boy babies, the Israelite boy babies, killed right away. They were breaking the law. And for 3 months, they weren't afraid to, by faith, go ahead and keep Moses, because they saw that the child was beautiful, and they didn't fear the king's edict because the child was beautiful, and they thought it was special. And so they believed in God rather than in Pharaoh, the king. And by faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He could have had a cush life for the rest of his life. He was in line to be a Pharaoh. Moses was, because adoption back there was as if you were born from the princess of Pharaoh. He was in lineage. He would have been rich for the rest of his life. No problems. And yet he refused it, believing in something bigger and better, that he didn't want the way that the Israelites were being treated, and he wanted the God of the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of the Israelites, who said that they would be put into slavery for 400 years, and that after around 400 years, that then they would be taken out of the slavery that they were put in. Abraham was told that. And so Moses believed that, and by faith believing that, rejected the offer, even though he grew up in the best of the best of the best. He gave it all up, believing in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob instead of being in a cush life. That's how strong Moses' faith was. He chose to suffer with the people of God rather than to enjoy the short-lived pleasure of sin. So it's what you choose to believe in. It's what you choose to put your hope in. It's what you choose to believe is most important to you. Is this life most important to you and trying to hold on to it? Are the people around you's life more important and trying to hold on to the people's life more important than holding on to what never fades or goes away, which is God and Yeshua and their goodness towards you and towards your loved ones, as long as you live in this life, when you die, and for eternity, and has a plan. Many people are taught that you can't trust God because he wants to get out, and if you don't believe in him and you don't believe in the Messiah, then you're going to absolutely be toasted and reprimanded and gone into eternal hell. And they think that the Bible says that. And I'm telling you, if you can believe that if you want to. You're welcome to, and you can go, okay, I can justify it through all these scriptures. So tell me about these scriptures and tell me how that's not true, and you can talk to your blue in the face about it. And if you want to go there and that makes you happy, I'm not taking that away from you. And if you believe it's true, I'm okay with that. I believe that there's more to the story than that, and that God is a lot more compassionate and patient, and that he has a plan that it's in the scriptures, but you have to look for it, reading it, different parts of it, to be able to see something else where he doesn't fully judge anyone until they fully understand and are able to see the difference between his way and their own way and Satan's way. And there's a plan to make that happen for everyone. And so that's what I believe, and it makes me happy. And if I'm wrong, I'm okay with being corrected by God. But I believe that I'm right because I used to believe in the idea of there's very few people that God will accept, and that everyone else will be killed. I believed that growing up, and it terrified the pants off of me. It was part of my depression. So I believe God is way better than he's been made out to be. And I believe the Bible proves how good God is, not how bad he is and how much we can't trust him. I do believe that he has rules, and I believe that he does not, he loves people. He hates sin, and he separates the sin from us. But he wants us to be redeemed, but not the sin. He wants it separated out of us and redeem us. Okay? So I believe that, and I believe I have many scriptures I could back that up with if I needed to. I'd have to pull them together, but I could do it. And I'm happy believing that, and I'm happy believing God is that amazing. Okay. By faith, Moses, let's see, Moses considered the reproach because of the Messiah. And this is interesting. It's talking about Moses here. For he considered the reproach because of the Messiah to be greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, since his attention was on the reward. So this is interesting, since the Messiah was not going to come for centuries and centuries later. Moses, by faith, believed that there was the Messiah. Okay, not just a Messiah, but the Messiah. A Messiah is someone who saves people. There's actually many messiahs. It's someone who's called to help save people. But there's only one, the Messiah, that saves all humanity. Okay, so we're talking here the Messiah, which he believed in more than in Pharaoh and in his chariots and in the world. He gave all that up, all the riches and all that security up, because he believed that the Messiah was coming, and that the reward would be even better than his Cush life physically on earth in Pharaoh's palace. This is what this is saying. So he knew about the Messiah. He understood, probably handed down from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, since they were, Abraham was a prophet, and Jacob got messages as well. So I'm sure they had understanding of these things. His attention, so Moses' attention was on the reward, which was greater. It was an eternal reward. By faith, actually, there was a reward that they knew, actually, of, because Abraham, remember, he went onto the land of Canaan and sojourned in the land of Canaan, and he was told by God the Father that his descendants were going to be given that whole land. He would have taught Isaac, who would have taught Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, who would have taught his 12 sons, and they all ended up in Egypt for 400 years, but they knew that they would be going back to the land of Canaan, because the land of Canaan was promised to them from God the Father. So Moses had enough wisdom of hearing from his natural parents, who were Israelites. He rather have that inheritance than the inheritance of what Pharaoh had. He even though they were slaves and it didn't look like they could take the land of Canaan, and he'd never seen the land of Canaan, he believed in that more than he believed in staying where he was at. That's pretty cool. So by faith he left Egypt behind, not being afraid of the king's anger. For Moses persevered as one who sees him who is invisible. So he didn't have full proof that God was there, because he was fully invisible, just like he is to us. But he believed perfectly that this invisible God was going to do what he said he was going to do. Does that sound familiar? That's faith. That's what we're working on. So when we have loved ones that die, we have an opportunity, if we so choose, when we're ready. And I'm not trying to take away your pain. I'm not trying to force you to believe anything. I am telling you that you can choose to hold on as long as you want and believe that all of this is terrible and awful, and that God may not be good, or you may focus on and believe that it's Satan that took your daughter or your son or your mother or father, and that he's the terrible one. But when you put your eyes on those things, it takes away your joy. Because our eyes need to fully and constantly learn how to be on God and his goodness. We can say that Satan did these things, but when we emotionally get involved in focusing on being angry, so angry with Satan or so angry with those things, then part of our attention is towards that thing that we're angry with, and what gets your attention controls you. Whatever takes your attention controls you. So that's why we're learning with time how to get our full attention on God and see everything in relation to a good God. So yes, Satan does these things, but God is bigger than what Satan can do, and all things will work for good to those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Yes, there is death, and death hurts, and we know that it's overcome by the blood of the Lamb, and that when the Messiah came, he overcame death, so we don't have to be afraid of it. He showed that death is temporary. It's temporary. How? Because he was resurrected in 3 days. We have faith more by showing that there can be resurrection into a glorified body. He was the first one. So that gives us hope and belief that we can too. Have we ever seen a glorified body? Most of us can say no. Well, then you're believing it by faith, right? Same thing. So I'm saying what you have faith in. So yes, you don't say these things don't hurt. You don't say these things aren't suffering, but in the suffering, you believe in something higher, that there's something working out. And so it goes on here, talking about more about faith through chapter 11, and then dropping into chapter 12, which is what I started with. Therefore, since we talk about all these people that have by faith decided something, they decided something so much that they put their whole life and their death in the hands of believing it. Therefore, since we also have such a large cloud of witnesses surrounding us, which we just talked about, the witnesses of God's goodness, that he showed up when they by faith believed what they did, and that with time, God did what he said he was going to do for Abraham's seed, and all the way down to the Messiah. We see in Scripture that God did exactly what he said he was going to do. He gave the land of Canaan to the Israelites. The Messiah came. So all of this is being talked about. This is a large cloud of witnesses surrounding us. Let us lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us. So the every weight we have are the things that we're disappointed in, that we're hopeless and desperate about. And I get hopeless and desperate. I don't get so hopeless anymore. I get more desperate at times. The hopelessness is pretty gone when I start to feel like something's not working and I start to get really sad, which I did this week. I just slow down and I say, Father, something's not working and I need your help. And I believe you'll show up, but I'm slowing down because I am toast without you. And I trust that you're going to show up, and I'm going to sit here and wait for your answer and for you to loosen things up for things to be able to function. And I'm going to believe you're going to do it. And if not, it's okay. I will be like Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, and I will go into the fire and trust you there too. I've chosen that. And I even said that in prayer this week. And we get to places in life where we make a choice. So we can desperately end up, choosing to sin or to be heavy, or we can choose that with purpose we make our choices and believe in them and stick with them and carry off the weight off of allowing the capital C Comforter to come in, because by faith we believe that what we are living for and choosing to die for is way worth more than what this physical life and what human beings can give to us or keep from us. That's how you lay aside every weight, which is the blackness that I had. Weight like you cannot believe. And the sin that so easily ensnares us. So sin comes from the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. We hear that, but we don't necessarily stop to consider what that means. That we have different tugs on us. We need to sleep. We feel like we need to eat. We feel like we need water. We feel like we need attention. We feel like we need love. We feel like that we need things. We feel like that we need people. We feel like we need safety. We feel like we need money. We feel like we need our sons to be healed. Like, Zachary, like not have any more seizures. We have all of these things that are suffering. Makes us feel that we need things. I'm very human, I know. When we make it more important about these needs, more than God being our need, and eternal being our need of loving our neighbor as ourself for the love of God, and put it in its place of all of these physical needs, not that we don't need them, but that we need God more and his way more for eternity, more than we need food, more than we need our sons healed, more than we need our husbands and wives who decide to walk out on us, more than we need our children to understand us, more than we need, carry it on, whatever, more than we need our beauty, more than we need our youth. It goes on and on. So the joy comes by looking at things and believing, just like the fathers in the Bible did, like our brothers and sisters did, in believing in something bigger and more that you can have when we get through this. Okay, so lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us. And so we're working on it. And we're not perfect at it. It's okay. You can practice little by little. But I'm telling you, in the middle of your suffering and in the middle of falling down, you feel so much better still knowing that God is with you and He's going to help you get back up. And that He's a perfect and good daddy. And He's good towards you and everyone you love. Life is not as desperate and painful as when I did not believe those things. That's why I believe them. Let us run with endurance the race that lies before us, right? We're still alive. We are still alive. So we still have a race going in this life, and the things that we need to learn to develop ourselves to love God's way even more and love Him even more than we love the physical things and love to try to just survive or try to be better off than everyone else. Okay? Keeping our eyes on Yeshua, which is what I was talking about. He is the one that gives us hope that there's something better. He's the one that shows that He will live forever as righteous in love. He gave everything from love. He did everything from love. And He is eternal. He lives forever. He will be a righteous king forever. We will have righteous rulers forever. We have the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, who is righteous and loving and loves everything and is willing to sacrifice, a king that's willing to sacrifice everything, including his life, just for you, and show you that it's okay. And He raised back from the dead and lives forever, and He'll forever be there. We won't have to worry about unrighteous rulers. And we will also, He was resurrected into a glorified body, and we will have glorified bodies. That, the sun will not scorch. We won't have to eat. We can eat, but we won't have to eat. And, things will be much different. And we will be able to rule with Him from a heart of compassion and understanding and help, because we want people to be able to live in harmony together, and we want righteous judgment. And we understand that. We learn to want those things now and to live like that now and show that that's what we believe in now. So that way, when we rule, just as He rules through the things we suffered, we understand righteousness and why it's so important, proper judgment, and why it's so important to maintain certain rules and laws, but also to have compassion and gently work with somebody who's in pain and hurt and needs. So the perfect balance. You're being honed now for these things. So it says, keeping our eyes on Yeshua for those reasons I just mentioned. The source and perfecter of our faith, or the author and finisher of our faith. So He is the author and finisher of our faith because He was from the very beginning the plan. So back in Genesis chapter 1, we see the plan of God start to come to fruition. Actually, it's not Genesis 1. It's Genesis... It's after the fall, in Genesis chapter 3. After the fall, here, we get the judgments here. of what happened. And there's something interesting that God says to the woman. Oh, excuse me. Okay, here we go. So when in Genesis chapter 3, when Satan deceives Eve and Eve eats of the fruit and Adam eats of the fruit, God says some judgments here. And this is an interesting thing that he says here. Then Jehovah God said to the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed more than any livestock and more than any wild animal. You will move on your belly and eat dust all the days of your life. I will put hostility between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. Now this is interesting. So it is generally understood that the serpent was being used by Satan, and so he has seed. He will strike your head. He's talking that man, their seed, will strike your head and you will strike his heel. So he's showing that the seed of man will actually overcome the seed of Satan. Here is what it's saying. I know that many of you will probably argue with me on this point. It's okay. You can look it up, look up and go down that rabbit trail if you like to. But there is an idea which they, wouldn't necessarily understood now, that this is talking about, in the end, Christ taking back, coming, the holy seed, the full human seed of the Messiah coming and taking back the whole rulership of the world that was stolen. Satan stole it from Adam, stole part of it from Adam anyway. And the Messiah became the righteous king to take it all back. That's another long, this is already over an hour. That's already another long study you can get into if you like to. I'm just giving you little things that I've had to learn to be able to stabilize and get out of my own blackness. This is how I did it. These are the concepts that helped me to understand how things are and how things happened and what God is doing. So Christ, it says that he was there in the beginning. He was the plan, and the plan was with God, and the plan was God, and everything that was created through the plan, which became the Word of God, which was made flesh. That's John chapter 1. You can read that for yourself. So that's how I put all of this together. And what I take, so therefore I can trust in Christ, who I can keep my eyes on in faith and understand that all this can work for good. And it's interesting that Yeshua did the same thing. It says, keeping our eyes on Yeshua, the source or the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy, so he did this from joy, that lay before him. What was the joy that lay before him? The joy that lay before him was that he was going to redeem us, buy us back, buy us out of the filth that we live in, and give us the opportunity to live for eternity with his way, to give us an open door to get back to the Father and back to his way, which is, love God with your whole heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbors yourself for the love of God, because you desire that, and you know that works better than any other way. Because of that, for that joy of being able to see for eternity a better way than what Satan has given and what the world has given and what us fallen humans have done, but give us a chance to be able to get back to paradise, he endured a cross and despised the shame. He hated the shame, he despised it, but he did it and he endured the cross because he had hope and he had faith in something bigger and better. And he wanted us. He wanted us so bad, and the Father wanted us so bad that the Son came willingly and for joy to do this for us, to show us that death cannot hold us. If we want death to not hold us, if we want to accept the Messiah, if we want to accept Father's love through the Messiah, if we want to accept Father's love, you can have that choice if you know about it, okay? And if you choose it. yourself, conscious choice. It's your choice. No one else makes it for you. No one's going to do it. No one's going to force you into it. You got to make it on your own. And has sat down at the right hand of God's throne. Do you believe that he is alive and he's sitting down at the right hand side of God's throne, and that everything is going to work out, and that God, he does? I'm telling you, he loves your daughters. He loves your sons. He loves you. He loves your ancestry. He loves all of his creation so much. He provided a plan for when it fell. And he wants it back. And he wants it to want to be redeemed, to want to come back to perfection. And those parts that want to hold on to their selfish, ugly ways and hurt people and hurt the creation and hurt everything around them, they're only going to be allowed to do it for a short period of time when you consider the forever that we're going to live in, so that we can understand why it's just not a good way of working, and we never want to go back to that, making this pigsty ever again or supporting this pigsty ever again. We'll never want to go back to that, and we will support and maintain loving ideas, and everybody will say how righteous God's way is and how loving and perfect his way is, and understand why it is better than any other way. And that's how I got out of the black hole. It only took me an hour to do. So I hope this has been encouraging to you, but genuinely, this is how I got out. And Father showed up in many ways and healed me little by little along the way. And if you want out, there is a way. By your choice, hold on to your pain as long as you like. I'm not trying to take anything from you. I'm only sharing with you what Father did for me, my testimony, and I have more peace and joy and hope and belief, and even in the things I suffer, that there's gonna be something good out of it. Everything I've ever gone through, all of my past, all those things that I think that I went through that was so terrible, is working out for good, and I believe it, not because I can prove it. It's what I choose to believe because it makes me happy. And I testify that I've become a more loving person. And Father has shown me how much I really want his way more than everything I've seen the world do to me and to others. I want his way more. And I want him to change me into his way more, and to get out whatever's in me that's of the world, that is of unlovingness, that is satanic, that is all about me and doing what I want instead of what he wants. Having my will be made into just desiring his will, because his will is the most loving, honorable, wonderful way that there is. That's what brings peace and happiness. And I believe that everything I went through was to help get me to the point where I desire that so much, and that I will want it and try to maintain it and try to back it up and try to live it and to share it with you. And that it does bring happiness, peace, and joy in this life and into eternity, because I have hope, and no one can take that hope away from me unless I let them. And I have that hope because I have chosen to believe that God is 100% good, and that his way is good, and that he adores me and he adores you too. I hope this has encouraged you. I hope that this helps to put some of the vlog posts I put together and why I talk about the things I talk about. And I hope it really does open your heart to trust God, because when you can trust that he is good, then you open your heart to the capital C Comforter to come in and comfort you. That these words that I'm saying, they will become alive for you by allowing the Comforter to come in and see that I'm not lying, and believe by faith all the stuff that's in here to give you comfort. And it becomes the living word, and not just things that are about other people, but they're opportunities of things that you can believe and get free from the hell that you may be experiencing now. I'd love to hear if this has helped in any way. And again, I respectfully am just answering what the question was, and wanting to give you comfort and let you know that there is an opportunity of a choice for a better way. And if it doesn't work for you, it's okay. I love you, and I know God will work with you in His time as you allow Him to. I bless you all, and I compassionately give you a hug for all the pain we're going through. Let's do this race. Let's keep our eyes on Yeshua and on God the Father being very good, and that all of this will make sense. And we may not understand it all right now, but it will make sense in the end. And we will be in joy for eternity, and we can have joy now that this exercise of a physical life that we're in is worth it. There's things that are going on, and everything we experience, it'll pass, and we won't have to go through those things for eternity. We won't have to go through that type of hell for eternity. Thank you, God. Leave comments. I'd love to hear from you. And if you'd like to subscribe and hear when I put up new things, you're welcome to click the subscribe button, and the little bell next to it helps you to know when I put new things up. And I just love being here and being with you and fighting this fight with you. So blessings to you all, and may you have a wonderful day, and you're able to go back and be in hope and comfort. Bye.